Hello Poppers, hello again crew, hope you're doing well out there. Bringing you another Aussie true crime tonight. I'm sorry if the light's a bit flashing there. Normally it's not too bad, it might be a little bit of a flicker in the lights there, so I apologise if it's not quite great viewing quality because of that. Guys, tonight we are talking quickly about the Russell Street bombing on the 27th of March 1986. Particular Stanley Taylor, who was convicted in 1988 as the leader, the plan of the whole attack. So this attack took place on March 27, 1986, the day before Good Friday, so Easter Thursday. The bomb was set for 1 p.m. in Russell Street, outside the Russell Street Police Complex. So back then, Russell Street was the main police headquarters in Melbourne, and 4 guys were charged with it. Stanley Taylor, Peter Reid, Craig Minogue and Rodney Minogue. Stanley Taylor and Craig Minogue were convicted. Rodney was convicted of being an accessory, but he appealed and that was overturned. Peter Reid was acquitted of the murder, acquitted of the bombing, and he got his charge of attempted murder with another policeman during a raid and some armed robberies. So Constable Angela Taylor, 22-year-old constable, was a real rising star in the Melbourne Police Force. She received a lot of awards. She was top of her class in the academy, I believe. So Constable Angela Taylor, 1964 to 1986. I believe there's a plaque there in memory of her. A terrible incident. So keep her in your memories. More importantly, this gang was charged with the crime. Before the bombing started, Stanley Taylor was, back in the 1960s or early 60s, was actually a very prolific armed robber. I think at one stage he robbed 7 banks in 5 days, so he obviously had a bit of a he's obviously a bit of a professional, I suppose, wasn't he? So he did numerous bank robberies. He escaped from prison twice. Funnily enough, if you go back in the history books, Ronald Ryan, who was the last man ever hung in Australia, when he was planning that very infamous escape, he actually asked Stan Taylor to escape with him. Stan declined because he was, I think, close to parole at the stage, or close to getting a parole hearing, and Peter Walker took Stan's place. You know what happened there in the history. So Stan didn't go this time, so he served his time in Pentridge mostly. He was a product of the very predatory H Division, which was one of the toughest units in Australia at the time, or pretty much anywhere. Very brutal regime. Huge giants of guards who would belch at the slightest indiscretion. They were told to keep brutalising the prisoners, to keep them in line. But if you look back on it, you probably could say that the brutalisation stuff back then, even though it was seen as being punishment, was actually more of a cause of damage to these offenders. Some didn't offend again, but some went on to have quite illustrious criminal careers. So Stan Taylor was born in September 28, 1937. He passed away in 2016, age 79. So Stan was doing those armed robberies. He became a very much big mover in the prison. Upon his release in 1978, for all intents and purposes, Stan had sort of reformed himself and sort of was becoming a role model for young people involved in crime. He became a part-time actor. You can see him actually on YouTube. He's on Prisoner. I'll try and find the episode for you. You actually see him on there. He played a gas station attendant who got robbed, funnily enough. So Stan was released in 1978. He worked as a sort of a youth worker, youth counsellor, doing like community outreach projects, helping young people who lost their way a bit. That time, Stan met up a young guy called Craig Minogue, who was quite a brilliant young chap, quite an overweight guy at the time, but he had some good qualities about him, they say. But back then, he was quite an angry young man. He was illiterate. So, Craig's not a silly man at all. He couldn't read. He was dyslexic at the time. So he was just a minor. Him and Rodney were very minor criminals back then. They weren't involved in much serious crime. Very small time. So Craig went up with Stan Taylor, and Craig's brother Rodney had a friend called Peter Reed, who he served a prison sentence together back in the early days. So Peter Reed was quite a serious sort of guy. He's not something he's quite a back then he was about 30 years of age. He's quite a dangerous sort of criminal, involved in very violent armed robberies. He's a free man now, I think, but he's been in a bit of trouble again recently. But so Peter Reed was quite an asset for Stan Taylor, because Stan wanted to do the armed robberies. He used the Minogues and Peter Reed to sort of scare people and be like a standover guys. So they did a lot of armed robberies together. Stan groomed these guys to be armed robbers. And under Stan's leadership, they did some pretty big heists back in the early to mid 80s. Stan apparently always had a desire to blow up Russell Street police. Blow up Russell Street. He had a desire. His hatred of police is quite strong. His desire to blow the police complex at Russell Street right up. It's been payback for his imprisonment, payback for his treatment at the hands of police there. He alleges back in the day. So Stan had quite a good knowledge of explosives. So Stan put together a plan yes. Stan the Man, he called himself. So Stan the Man he put together an idea, a plot, which he allegedly got involved in Minogue brothers, especially Craig Minogue and Peter Reed. The plan was to load a car up, which would have to be a VB Commodore, I think, which they stole. So the plan was to load the Commodore up, park it in front of Russell Street. When the 1 o'clock lunchtime starts, peak hour, detonate the bomb, do maximum carnage. And the thing was, the bomb went off, but there's supposed to be a second explosion afterwards, which was designed to kill people helping out. You know what I mean? So the first blast, people go in, they run in to help. The second one is when it wipes everyone out in the area. So it's quite odd. Apparently, according to one Dennis Tipping, who's a police bomb disposal expert, he said in Melbourne, he said that he was told, based on the IRA back in Ireland, the first blast is always to do small amount of damage, but to get people to come in, what's that noise? What's the explosion? Oh, someone's hurt. Everyone runs in, people crowd around. The second explosion always is the most deadly. That's what this officer was trained in. So there was a second blast planned, but by chance, the first blast actually cancelled the second blast out. So there was no second explosion. So if that happened, that would have been an absolutely devastating effect. It could have brought the whole complex down in Russell Street. So, unfortunately, Angela Taylor and a friend of hers, Carl Donadio, another constable, were tossing a coin to see who's going to get lunch from the shop across the road from the complex there. Angela unfortunately lost the toss and went across Constable Taylor lost the toss and went across the road to get lunches for him. 1 p.m. I think she said about 1. I think she left the complex about 12:59. About 1 p.m. or just after 1, the device exploded. Unfortunately, she had very severe burns. She's really, really strong, quite an amazing lady. She survived for like another month. Unbelievably, she survived for a few more weeks. And unfortunately, she succumbed to her injuries in April 1986, about a month after the explosion. Um, so the guys, on that same day, actually after bombing in the at lunchtime, Stan and a couple other guys, Peter Reid, Craig Minogue, drove a car through a bank and robbed it on the same day. So they drove a car through the window of the actual bank. So quite, yeah. Anyway, Stan Taylor lived in a place called Birchip, a small country town a few hours out of Melbourne. In this town, he had a friend of his called Paul Kurt Hetzel, who's was turned to be an absolute rat. Now, Paul Hetzel, I believe Paul was more involved with bombing than what he claimed. Paul was a long-time associate of Stan. Paul Hetzel was a very violent criminal, armed robbery, attempted murder, and more we both don't know about. Now, Paul Hetzel, obviously a good friend of Stan. I'm not sure how involved he was. I know he was involved when the group stole some gelignite back in the day from an old mine shaft. He was involved with that too. He was with them at the time. He was doing armed robberies with Stan and Craig and Peter. So no one really knows how involved Paul was. Probably never will find out. About a month after, just some great police. If you've got a chance to see it, I'll tell you what. This forensic investigators. It has an actual episode on the Russell Street bombing. And in the episode, you'll see the officer I'm talking about. You see like Bernie Rankin, Dennis Tipping, all these guys and other officers who did some amazing forensic work on the bomb car itself. Was left of the bomb car. They found some very amazing clues. You can see it on YouTube actually. So forensic investigators, hosted by Lisa McCune. Pardon me, hosted by Lisa McCune. There's an episode on there about the Russell Street bombing. So Russell Street bombing was in episode series 2. It was Russell Street. All right. So after that, after some amazing detective work, some unbelievable forensic and investigative work, and some shakedowns of some good surveillance, they found some tips through surveillance. They found a mate of the Peter Reid, Craig Minogue, guy that he lived with. He told them some information after a while. So they did some surveillance. They went to arrest Peter Reid. Peter Reid opened fire on the police. He was shot too, non-fatally, so was the police. Both survived. So Peter Reid was arrested first. He was charged first with Constable Taylor's murder. After that, they found a guy called Stan the Man. Someone named him Stan the Man, this housemate of theirs. So they went through the whole database of criminals they knew of and known aliases. And they found Stanley Taylor. And as soon as I heard Stan Taylor's name, I was like, oh, hang on, this guy's got form, to put it mildly. So they found Stan Taylor up, and they arrested Stan Taylor up in Birchip. And Stan gave up Craig and Rodney's house as well and told them they were involved with it. Stan told the police that he was actually that Craig and Rodney Minogue was actually the main culprits, not him at all. So Stan was arrested. Craig and Rodney left Birchip at the time to get out of the heat, to get away from the heat police pressure. They went to live in a hotel in Swan Hill, and it was about an hour away. So, of course, Stan kindly volunteered the name of the hotel that Minogue was staying at. They were arrested. Craig and Rodney both got charged. And Stan's mate, Paul Hetzel, was the one that the police arrested as well, but he was actually he rolled over pretty fast. I think old Hetzel knew he was in a bit of trouble as well with his form. He knew if he went down, he'd probably get life no parole as well with his prior convictions and his general history. So Hetzel became crown witness for the prosecution. So in 1988, Stan Taylor, Peter Reid, Craig and Rodney Minogue were all charged and put on trial with Constable Angela Taylor's murder. After a long trial, and the longest in Melbourne's history at the time, Stan Taylor and Craig Minogue were both found guilty of the murder of Constable Angela Taylor. Stan got a life sentence without the possibility of parole, one of the earliest ones, probably the second person, I think, in Victorian history, if I'm not wrong. Second person in Victorian history to get life without parole. That was back in '88. Craig Minogue, he also received a life sentence, but because of his age at the time, he received a minimum parole period of 28 years. Now, you're wondering, Craig Minogue is actually, just on a footnote, Craig Minogue was actually, that minimum term actually expired a few years ago, back in 2016. Now, you're wondering why, what's happened to Craig Minogue? Is he out? No, he's not out. He's still in jail. The Victorian government shifted the goalposts to try and bring legislation in that prevents like police killers or serious killers like that to be up for parole. So they're determined to keep Craig Minogue in jail for all this time. He's actually done a lot of PhDs. Maybe he's changed. Maybe, I don't know. I'd like to see. I would like to see if he has changed. He can maybe get a chance at parole, but you never can tell. I mean, who knows? That's above my pay grade, unfortunately. It's up to the guys above me to try and decide that. Peter Reid was found not guilty, but he did receive a 13-year jail sentence for attempted murder during the police raid and armed robberies as well. Rodney Minogue was found guilty of being accessory after the fact. That was overturned on appeal, and he's currently doing all kinds of things. But Peter Reid, the footnote to the story, Peter Reid, and he was a free man at the time. He was recently charged with Craig Minogue a large amount of sexual attacks, which happened when the gang, just before the bombing, leading up to it, the gang apparently did some sexual attacks of young girls, so violent attacks. So Peter Reid is now under investigation for that. So the outcome it hasn't been decided yet. They're still deciding. Obviously, I'm not sure where the case is at. So Craig Minogue and Peter Reid are being investigated about that. Rodney Minogue's a free man. I'm not sure what he's doing. He's got some business stuff going on. Paul Hetzel, his wife Julie, who was also informed of the gang. Paul was on a show a while ago. Strange story about how he's terrified of the gang, but I don't quite buy that myself. I think Paul Hetzel was very involved in the bombing. I'm not sure how involved he was, but I think he was quite involved with it. There was no Paul wasn't the guy to be scared about. You know, he was quite a serious character himself, Hetzel. So he wasn't someone to be threatened and bullied around. I think he was quite involved with it, but who knows? We don't know. So Hetzel and his wife were living in country. They were in country Victoria for a while. They were in Perth for a while. Queensland, country Victoria. Who cares? They're somewhere. So that was the story of the Russell Street bombing and the bit of history of Stan Taylor, the convicted ringleader of the group of the armed robbers who became Russell Street bombers. Summing it up, this is back in 1986. Unheard of in Australian history, like random attacks, especially something like that magnitude, where it could have been so much worse. Thank goodness it wasn't. Thank God it wasn't. But it could have been so much worse than what it already was. It was already bad enough as it was. Constable Angela Taylor, great police officer. Could have been an amazing police officer if she wasn't there, the wrong place, wrong time. So, yeah, terrible act. Huge loss for, obviously, not just the Taylor family, but for the community in general. She's quite a amazing lady too, Angela Taylor. Very, very good police officer. It could have been a great police officer. So that's a terrible loss for not just her family, but the community in general. So we remember you, Constable Taylor. Summing up, guys. Stan Taylor, 1937 to 2016. Unique sort of criminal back in his day. One of the old school sorts, I guess. But in the end, a very horrendous attack. First of its kind in Melbourne. And so we'll see what happens to Craig Minogue if he gets out or if he gets the parole hearing. I don't know. Case is ongoing against him and Peter Reid, so we don't know what's going on there. Well, I hope I summed it up okay for you guys. I hope I missed a few points there. But if I missed something, go on to YouTube and see the either forensic investigators or there's another one you can type on. It actually has the news broadcast at the time of the actual attack. So, yeah. Okay, guys. Well, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys really enjoyed. I hope the light isn't too bad. It's not flickering too much. A bit up and down at the moment. So, thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you really enjoyed. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. Make sure you do if you can. That'd be great. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. I hope you stay safe out there, guys. Talk to you soon. As normal, APOV. Salam. Peace.